Good afternoon, and welcome to the Scrumptious Woman podcast. I have with me Dr. Laurie Mintz. So I absolutely loved looking at your book, Becoming Cliterate. I'm going to let you speak a little bit about what you do. You're obviously here helping women, but I really would love to hear a little bit. How did you come about this and introduce yourself?
A Tired Woman's Guide to Passionate Sex. And this book, Becoming Cliterate, Why Orgasm Equality Matters and How to Get It. And in a nutshell, I'll start with this book since it's what we're going to focus on rather than how I became a sex therapist and all that whole long story. But I was teaching the psychology of human sexuality at the University of Florida. And I discovered that the young women in the class were not having orgasm. They didn't know about their clitoris. It was like a whole generation of knowledge was lost to these women. So I started, yeah, it's really crazy. And I started teaching to the orgasm gap, to women's pleasure, and I would get notes from students. Thanks to your class, I'm orgasmic. Thanks to your class, my girlfriend's orgasmic. And it was so wonderful. And I decided I'm not keeping this in my little classroom. I'm going to write a book to empower, to expose why women aren't orgasming at the rate they are, and then to give solutions to that problem, both culturally and in the bedroom.
Which I love because you're also touching on the thing culturally, right? What have we been taught about it? Then the different cultures that it's not even okay to talk about this and to want more and to even want pleasure. Pleasure is such a loaded word that people are like, oh, it's frivolous. But I really feel that pleasure is how we change the world. Right. So for me, I really stand that, yeah, there has been so much sexual assault that if we can change that and if we can change if we can heal it in ourselves, how it heals the whole world and how we can bring this into cultures, how we can bring this into companies. So I love that you are speaking about pleasure, orgasm, and actually seeing how that impacts not only ourselves, but a larger ripple.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, women's lacking orgasm happens in a cultural context. What's happening in the world is getting played out in the bedroom and media images. And it's a topic that I feel very passionately about. And I love that you said that it's if we teach women that's like women have gotten messages, right, that sex is painful, meaning even the words we use are messed up, but that's a
Right.
whole chapter in the book. But we teach women that sex is painful, that sex is something we do for men. There's so much sexual assault. And if we teach women, no, sex is for you. Your orgasms are as important as him. It's not supposed to. I think that is a very important and healing and pleasurable thing for women to embrace.
I love it. And I love the way you're touching on that. It's not for him. And a lot of us were taught, like, oh, yeah, this is what you might have on your marriage day. Say, like when we didn't have sex before marriage. And this is what you might expect. And you just see over the ages how things have changed. And now with the internet, everyone's, oh, we can have this, but you're also expected to perform. And I really see where I've got 4 kids, I've got 2 boys and then twin daughters, where when they started wanting to become a little bit sexual active, it's like, what's expected of me, mommy? Yeah, I used to walk around an orgasm expert, and I've got 4 Muslim kids. So they're like, mommy, not quite sure that was the right thing. But then they would ask me, what's expected of me? And especially the girls, I'm like, you know what? Anything that's expected of you is wrong. What do you want? Where can we start going into what feels good to you? What are you curious about? What does sex mean to you even?
Yes. It reminds me of a story of this was before I wrote my book. I have 2 daughters. They're both older adults now, but when one of my daughters was about, she told me, and I had said to her, look, if you're going to have intercourse, please let me know. She had this serious boyfriend. I was like, because I want to get birth control for you. Blah, blah. So she told me, we're planning this. And I said, okay, let's make the appointment. But then I also said, look, all you've seen in the movies is the man puts his penis in and you're both going to have pleasure. I said, and so that's all you know, and that's all he knows. And that's not going to work for you. You need to know your own body and you need to advocate. So at the time, the book I gave her, which is still a great book, I said, so here's a book called I Love Female Orgasm. And it's like, oh, Mom, laughed with the book. But then I would hear her and her friends like in the room, like giggling about this. It's like women aren't given information about their bodies. And so it's just these young women and young men are imitating what they see in movies and porn. And it's not going to result in orgasm for women. And it's likely to result in pain.
Yeah, isn't it? And that's just the interesting bit where it's still not taught. We're still not taught female anatomy. People, like, I had someone on the podcast that until she was 29 did not know where her clitoris lived. And I was like, what, you rediscovered? She's like, no, I discovered my clitoris at age 29. I'm like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Juliet. I am so immersed in this, and you are too. So I don't know if you, every once in a while I think, oh, like everyone knows this. Like I'm obsolete. What I'm doing is I'm not needed anymore. And then I hear so many stories like this. And no, of course, women, where are they going to learn this? Because in school, all they're told is the boys are separated from the girls often, if they have sex ed at all. And the boys are taught about wet dreams and the girls are taught about their periods. That has nothing to do with female pleasure.
Isn't it crazy? I was talking to my twin daughters about this the other day. And one of them, because I live in Britain, so oftentimes the schools are single sex. So 4 kids, they all went to very different schools, different abilities as well. So as a mother, that's just, I'm Dutch, so we're quite open about this. My ex-husband's Lebanese, also quite open about it. There were mixed signals a little bit. And then one of them was, one of my daughters, Noor, was saying, so mommy, actually in our second school when she was 12 or 13, they all were given mirrors and were told to check and actually had anatomy lessons. This is your outer labia, your inner labia. And actually you need to check to see that everything is okay down there. And I was like, she said, I never told you that because it was so embarrassing when I was 13. But now I like it. Now she's 23, right?
Where is this school? I want every young woman
This is
to
in
go.
London.
Oh my God. See, I'm in the US and things are terrible and they're going to get worse. They are getting worse. And that's like unheard of. Even here, gynecologists don't, only some do that. They cover you with the drape. Oh, you don't want to see your own dirty parts. Like, that's amazing.
Isn't it beautiful? And it's one of the things that I like doing in my retreats. It's like giving everyone a mirror and just starting to recognize what it looks like and all the different labias and all the way that our bodies, how we are all similar and yet very different shaped. And there's no wrong, there's no right. It's just how we are.
Yes. It strikes me, something I heard someone say once. People should not have different knowledge of sex in their bodies because they go to different schools. It's like someone could grow up in here in the US, one state, and know a lot more than someone who grows up in another state. It's just, I don't think people across the world, I do think people learn that 1 and 1 is 2 or 2 and 2 is 4. But it's when it comes to sex, it's so culturally and locally bound.
It completely is. I remember moving from Geneva with my 2 sons, and my husband's cousin had gotten the boys into school, and then I got pregnant with twin daughters. And she has 3 daughters. So I said, so what do you call the vagina. What do you call that with your girls? And she's, oh, front, bottom. I'm like, what? Front, bottom. I'm like, what's, and she's, yeah, bottom and front, bottom. I was like, oh, that's confusing. So I was just like, that's really confusing. So I remember talking to a journalist about this a few years ago. I said, it's so confusing when the parents can't even give it a proper name. And then in school, you don't get taught. So how about these children that grow up and they're like, I've got a bottom and I've got a front bottom. So doesn't quite work.
No. And in fact, one thing I really like, the outside area, you know this, maybe your listeners don't, obviously, the outside. So I'm saying it, the outside area where the clitoris and the inner labia, which are the most sexually responsive parts, are called the vulva. The
Yes.
canal where babies can come out, penises and dildos and fingers can go in, is called the vagina. But very few women orgasm from vaginal stimulation. Yet we
Absolutely.
call our entire, at least in America, people call the entire genitals a vagina. And by doing so, we are linguistically erasing the part of ourselves that gives us the most pleasure. And we're calling our genitals by the part that's more useful to men than to women themselves.
Wow, that actually really hit.
Hmm.
We're calling it what's more useful to men than to ourselves because a lot of women we don't get. We may not experience as much pleasure from just penetration. This is one of the things I had this VIP couple over to do recording for their show, and I said, "Do you realize that it may take up to 40 minutes to be aroused enough for penetration?" And he says, "I don't have time for that." I was like, "Wow, okay." But really to recognize that I got my puppet out, my vulva puppet out
I have
to
one
the
too.
show. Right? We all have some kind of vulva puppet just to show what are they? What are the parts? What are the parts called? And just to not have any shame about it, to say, this is who I am. This is what I have.
That not enough time for it reminds me, I was talking to a reporter about a sex scene in a movie, and it's a very erotic scene, says everyone, and she wanted to know what I thought of it. The woman orgasms with no warm up, because I hate the word, I won't use the word foreplay either, because that implies it's just the lead up to the main event, sex, penetration. So I don't use those words because they're also male privileging. But I
So
said,
true.
well, like, it's not realistic. She orgasms with just no warm up and a little penetration. And the reporter said, well, you have to understand they only have 5 to 10 seconds to fill that. And I said, that doesn't really convince me because there's other things that can be shown in 5 to 10 seconds. Like, why do we choose that? Is the whole,
Completely.
that would be like if we overprivileged female pleasure, we'd be showing a man orgasming from going down on a woman. We don't do that.
I love that.
It's the same
What have
thing.
we been taught that we have to show that it's a certain way? And this is what I teach my couples, like, let it not be transactional. If you want to have a date morning and really just one of you receive, and I'm sure you've talked about receiving and that you don't have to always both be the giver and the receiver, but that it's okay. So one of you maybe want to receive different kinds of touch. I'm an erotic blueprint coach as well. So we really look at the ways into pleasure. And that sometimes it's so nice to set your timer for maybe 20 minutes. If that's all that you can receive. The capacity to receive is also what we build on. And then receive without having to wonder if your partner wants to have a blowjob afterwards or want to have penetration, but really just be open to receive that kind of touch.
I love that. Yeah, I do teach the same thing. Yeah. And one time, but it's so interesting. I wrote on my blog, I wrote about turn taking and how lesbian women have more orgasms because they take turns giving and
Yes.
receiving it. They don't just try
Nice.
to orgasm during the same act of penetration. So I said, here's ways to flip the script with
Right.
turn taking. She comes first, she comes second, blah, blah. But I said, or just one person you could receive. And a man wrote into the blog and he said, yes, that's my favorite thing. Every Sunday morning, I pleasure my wife and I ask for nothing in return. And only she orgasms. And I had to shut the comments down. People were like, that's weird. That's weird. And but think about it. That is exactly what's happening in heterosexual hookup sex all the time, that men are receiving and women are. And nobody says that's weird.
Isn't it funny that we're still questioning female pleasure, orgasm, climax? I do this practice called orgasm meditation, which is 15 minutes of clit fiddling, basically touching someone's clit. And the only aim is to feel something for the person with the clit, for the person who's actually stroking it. And it was such an incredible eye opener for me that there's no penetration, there's no exchange wanted afterwards. This is, you put a timer on, after 15 minutes, it's finished. You just say, oh, at this moment, I felt that. And people, when they first hear about that, saying, that's just fucking weird. I'm like, yes. And we can also just teach people that for 15 minutes, you can have that amount of attention on a tiny little part without, and you'll have all the things that go through your mind, your head going, oh my God, this is crazy. And for the woman opening her legs and being stroked, like, this is absolute madness. Someone is stroking my clitoris. What should I do? So we're going through all that conditioning in 15 minutes, which is quite eye-opening, actually.
Yes, I have never gone to a workshop or given a workshop, but I've certainly read about it. So I know everything you're talking about. And the mind piece is something that's really interesting. It's not just what the women are feeling in their body. You're emphasizing what's going on in their heads, which is generally so important to women's orgasms in general, because there's so much going on. Do I look okay? Do I smell okay? Is this taking too long? And learning to turn that off and to focus on sensation is obviously essential to having pleasure.
And that's it. So most people don't really know what they like. They know what they don't like. Well, I don't want you to do this, and I don't want you to do that. I'm like, okay, so let's take those things off the table and let's just start seeing what feels good. I like working with timers. I like them with time constraints so that we can actually just teach people to start having a bit more pleasure. Because if you say book out 2 hours, they're like, oh yeah, no, what am I going to do in 2 hours if we can't talk about the children, can't talk about our problems? I'm like, no, let's just make it like a really short period that you can succeed at.
I like working with timers too, by the way. Yeah. 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 When I do sensate focus, a lot of times I'll use a timer, because otherwise it helps people not be up in their head. Like, when should we stop? Is this going on too long? It gives like a container around it, which I think is important.
Can I ask you, what was your most cringe moment that either a client or your children or when you grew up knowing that this became a passion was? Did you have one?
Yes, I do. My most cringe moment, and I won't know if it would, I don't know if cringe is the word for me. I don't cringe usually, but my most,
Oopsie.
no, are you most kidding me? Like this, so maybe I'm thinking of cringe wrong?
No,
Maybe.
that's perfect. One of the moments that stood out to you. Let's say it that way.
Okay, so we were talking about sex ed in my class, and I had a woman, this was not too long ago, raise her hand and say that in her sex ed class, she was told that if she had, they use the word sex, intercourse before marriage, her vagina would mold to the shape of that person's penis permanently, and her future husband would never be satisfied because his wouldn't fit.
Oh my God. And she believed that.
Of course she did. She was 12 and the teacher told her that. He was an authority figure.
This was a teacher that told
Yeah,
her
it was in
that.
sex ed.
Oh my God. I hear about religions just saying things like that, or parents driving like the fear of God into children, but this isn't sex ed.
No. And
Wow.
I had a cringeworthy moment yesterday, actually. Now you get me going. This is a good question. I'm going to ask every sex educator and therapist what. Oh my goodness, I love this question. I was on a radio show yesterday. It was a call-in show, and a woman called in, and she was 62, and she said, "I can't orgasm anymore, and my doctor told me that's normal. I shouldn't worry about it. That's just what happens to it."
Oh,
My answer, of course, was that's not true and you need a new doctor. But that was also cringeworthy.
but isn't it sad? Yeah, I'm postmenopausal. After 4 kids, the baby factory is definitely closed. And I see so many people go through the menopause and the pains that they're having and just thinking like, oh, I'm never going to get my sex life back again. This is just what happens to us. I'm like, no, it's not. And
Right.
stop. And stop and actually inform yourself and let's get this on the road, baby. You can have a hell of a lot of pleasure. And it doesn't always need to end in a climax. You can have fun and have pleasure in a completely different way than you used to maybe have it with your husband or partner before.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So lots of authority figures giving a lot of bad messages out there. That's cringeworthy.
Completely. What are 3 of the things that people come to you with most? What are the complaints, worries, questions they have?
Diminished desire is probably the number one with women over 35. Inability to orgasm during partner sex, mismatched sex drive, and my partner just isn't doing it for me. Those are the top ones.
Yeah. It's sad, right? And if you could give our listeners just like 3 easy to implement tips for any of those questions, or any of those topics,
You want me to
really
go through
something
all
that
of them or just one of them?
just one of them, just choose one of them, but like what are some of the things that they can do from listening to this podcast that they can take away and, oh, I'm not broken.
Yeah, first of all, no one is broken, but so many women think they are, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about diminished desire because I think
Yeah.
there's some real easy steps here. So when we think of desire, we think of being horny, right? Of our genitals tingling, our skin tingling, wetness. And that's the reason to have sex. It turns out that there is 2 types of desire. There's spontaneous desire, which is what we're talking about. And there's what's called responsive or receptive desire, which is like,
Mhm.
I'm not horny. Sex will be good when it gets going. It'll feel closer to my partner and et cetera, many reasons. And a lot of times women are using that responsive desire, but they're calling it duty sex. And what I want women to know is as you age and as a relationship ages, you stop feeling, most women really pretty much stop feeling spontaneously horny. There's biological reasons. I don't want to get into all of that. But women are not broken when they feel that way, when they stop feeling horny. And so many women feel they're broken. But what you need to know is arousal can come before desire, that you can reverse the equation and you can have sex to get horny rather than waiting to be horny to have sex. And so you can schedule sexual encounters. I like to call them trysts because that's a lot sexier than scheduled. Like we didn't just here's my example. Like we didn't just show up the same time to record this podcast. We said it's important to both of us. We made time
Mhm.
for it. I
Of
don't just
course.
show up at my yoga classes. I put them in the schedule because they're important to me. And you can and should do that with sex and use that time, build the arousal. Don't rush through it. Be mindful. That's another tip. A lot of times women are having bad sex because they're up in their head. Do they look okay? No, okay. And one thing that's really helpful is to learn to focus on sensation. And you can do that by meditation. You can do it by yoga. You can also just do it in your daily life. The next time you brush your teeth, Really focus on how that feels. And when your
Mhm.
mind wanders, and it will, because that's what minds do,
Yep.
bring it back to the sensation and practice that. And give up the myth of spontaneous sex, because it never was. Think about when you went out on a date. You got dressed, you put on perfume, you flirted all night. The night ended in sex. That's spontaneous, that's well orchestrated. So, for women with diminished desire, first of all, see a doctor, see a sexual medicine physician, make sure everything's okay. But it's and there are medicines that are, at least in the US, you can take. But the other thing you can do is prioritize it. Give up the idea
Okay.
that it should have to be spontaneous, and sex lead you to the desire versus waiting for.
I love that so much. I would add to it what I tell my couples is schedule it in and schedule it in for a time when you're not tired. So first thing on a Sunday morning or so, make sure that the kids are away. And
Yeah,
actually, like
good
you
one.
said,
Not yes, absolutely. Great addition. Thank you. I say that too. Yeah.
but get dressed up for it. This didn't just come out of nowhere, right? Get dressed up, take a shower, create a beautiful atmosphere for it. Put all the dirty socks away that are on the floor that might get her out of her pleasure. What are the things that put you in pleasure? What are the things that take you out? And then just as soon as you start becoming aware of that, then just set yourself up for success, both of you.
Absolutely. The only thing I would contradict is, if unless dressing up doesn't turn you on, if you like being in your jammies, that's fine too. We're
Oh,
not gonna force
completely. What I meant, just take a shower.
take
Take
a
a shower,
shower.
brush your teeth,
Sure.
brush your hair. Get like in the mood that way as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, and no, absolutely no pressure. You don't have to look all the part. It's just what did you used to do? What are the things that you like doing for yourself, right? Like I put on silk and satin shirts because I like the way it feels on my skin, not because, yeah, probably also how they look, but it's more for me,
Yeah,
it's all
it's for
about
you. Yeah.
feelings,
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah.
textures, and yeah, and fun things. This has been an absolute delight. Would you please let our listeners know, and it will all be in the show notes, how to contact you, what's new in your world, where to get your books, etc.
Oh, thank you so much. So you can find me online at my name, www.drlauriemintz.com. You can buy my books on Amazon, indie bookstores, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold. I am active on social media, especially Instagram and Facebook, with that same handle at Dr. Laurie Mintz. And stay tuned on my Instagram for some news. I'm starting my own podcast, which I'll be talking about at some point. I have a new book contract, but that one's top secret. So I won't talk about it except to say it's happening. And it has
Oh, exciting.
been a delight to speak with you. We definitely teach things very similar, and I really appreciate all you're doing to enhance people's sexual pleasure. And I appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, it's been absolutely fun. And I love that you just also just take a bit of humor to it, right? It can be such otherwise it's such a heavy topic. But I love that, yeah, you're teaching women, children, everyone, and that you have taken this passion and are just putting it out in the world. So thank
Thank
you
you. You